introductions. I'm Jake. I run a communications firm, 96NX, here in the city.
My name's Amy. I'm co-founder with my two sisters of Soom Foods. We import ingredients from Israel and sell them here to the American market, primarily tahini. By a show of hands, anybody here familiar with tahini? When we started this company, who's brought Soom? We'll ask this question. Thank you guys. Love that. 6 years ago, when we started this company, or even 2011, 7, not 8, who knows at this point, how many years ago? Because like the rabbi said, you just don't look down or back. But I don't think maybe even half of you might have raised your hands, or definitely not across the entire American landscape. So we've worked very hard to make tahini a more familiar and appreciated ingredient in the American market.
This group knows.
Okay.
So I'm Dan Hershberg. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Workhorse, a brewing company. I should do the same thing that Amy did. How many people have had a beer before? Captive audience. I had a lot more friends than I thought I did when the brewery, that's for sure. A lot of R&D suggestions. So Workhorse opened in King of Prussia last September. I've been an entrepreneur since 2009. This is my first big-scale venture. We opened a 70,000 square foot production facility with a large brew house with the intent of becoming a regional brewery. We also have a large tap room and private event space, so we do a lot of customer-facing initiatives out of our facility. We currently distribute to about 250 bars, restaurants, and distributors throughout the southeastern Pennsylvania area. And our brand focuses on accessible, approachable craft beer. So even if you did raise your hand not having a beer, or maybe you've only had a couple craft beers, we try to find ways to educate the consumer, make it a little bit less I guess exclusive. There's a lot of kind of exclusive mentality in the branding and positioning of craft beer. We want to make it accessible for everybody. So variety of flavor profiles, and very excited to talk to you guys a little bit more about what we've got cooking in KMP.
My name is Greg. I'm the co-founder of Carvertise, and what we do is we pay Uber and Lyft drivers and everyday people to put ads on their own cars for companies they like and support. So we're essentially opening up the market the same way there's ads on buses and taxis, ads on cars. We have about 400,000 people who've signed up who want to put an ad on their car, and we're operating in about 40 different cities right now with active campaigns.
Cool, thank you. So just to kind of start on a higher level, and we can get a little bit more granular with questions as we move forward. What drove all of you to start your businesses? What was the inspiration or the driving force behind that? Because all of you and all of us are relatively young, so there's a lot of risk involved with starting a company, going off on your own. Sometimes you don't have the support networks necessary. It could be challenging in financial hurdles. So talk a little bit about what it was that really drove you to get started and how you overcame those initial challenges.
Yeah, well, all I could think about was this idea. So I tell people, if you want to start a company, it's got to overtake you, right? I couldn't do anything else because everyone I talked to, I'd be like, you should put an ad in your car. I'd be like, and I'd be like, what? And everything I interacted with, I looked through the lens of that. So I was just obsessed. And then on top of that, no one else would hire me. So that was a pretty big factor. I was doing interviews at Barclays, I remember, and they're asking all these riddles, and I was like, I don't know, what does that have to do with anything? So I was obsessed. No one would hire me, and also I had healthcare, which was helpful personally, right? So I knew I would be good for at least 3 or 4 years. When I started, I was 21, so I knew I had a safety net just in case. And I also had a great support system. I had friends that, were letting me crash at their house off the books. I had a couple part-time jobs, and I kind of looked at it just have fun with it. And I think, being naive also really helped too, because I just had no idea how. I was like, oh, ads on cars makes sense. What could go wrong? So just not really knowing what I was getting myself into, I think, was a big advantage as well.
So my origin story for this particular business is pretty atraditional. I actually started day drinking at a bachelor party at 10 a.m. on Friday. So I guess the beer thing actually does kind of make sense in retrospect. But I had a fortunate reconnection with a college classmate of mine from Cornell. He had lived with my cousin when we were both undergrad, and we were hanging out at this bachelor party talking about our entrepreneurial ventures. I owned an apparel company at that point called Philly Faithful. Sole proprietor, small business, had run it for about 8 years, and was looking for kind of the next step professionally. And he had told me about this brewery that he'd opened in Cincinnati called Rheingeist. And Rheingeist is now 6 years old, and they are the 28th largest brewery in the country. So, you know, when entrepreneurs talk about the hockey stick growth trajectory, that is the case study in the craft beer industry. So he had invited me out there to visit the brewery and spend a couple days just hanging out, and I figured what was the worst that was going to happen? Get to drink some good beer and see some cool people and learn about another business. And the long story short is that I just fell in love with the culture of the industry. There's a combination of a blue-collar work ethic with a kind of creative driving force behind every brewery, and at the end of the day, again, you get to drink some beer. So kind of spent about 2 years doing R&D out in the market. Craft beer as an industry is incredibly collaborative. So unlike my previous industry, I couldn't just walk into my competition and say, hey, how did you do what you do? Where do you source your products? Why do you price it this way? Craft beer is completely the opposite. So you can literally walk into a brewery and say, hey, what's the secret sauce? And they will tell you everything you want to know. So as an entrepreneur, to have a blueprint that allows you to eliminate the potential to make some pretty catastrophic mistakes in a very capital-intensive business was really a great opportunity for me to have. So spent 2 years doing that, and was able to glean enough operational insight to open the brewery the way that we did. The one common thread that we saw throughout pretty much every brewery in the industry was that they didn't accommodate for future growth. They didn't have a large enough facility, they didn't have a large enough brew house, they didn't have access to capital. So what would happen when the craft beer boom hit was they just couldn't meet demand. And that, as an entrepreneur, seems to be the number one hurdle, right? You want to make sure you have enough product to sell and you can make enough money to pay your bills and grow your business. So we really dove into the deep end, and again, that story the rabbi told is pretty spot on. You know, if you look at what we've done, it's pretty aggressive, but at the same time, I'd rather, you know, drop in the deep end of the pool and see if I can swim as opposed to, you know, wading my way in.
The joke in our family and our business is that my oldest sister Shelby had a business degree. My middle sister Jackie fell in love with a tahini expert, and I just needed a job. So, you know, similar to Greg, sometimes just not having anything else going on is a great impetus to starting a business. But really, my oldest sister, or I should start with my middle sister Jackie, has been living in Israel for over a decade now, since 2008, and was then dating and is now married to Omri, who was a small-scale tahini kind of broker in Israel. He would buy tahini from large manufacturers and developed his own network of salad companies, which are people that make hummus, or baba ganoush is what they call them in Israel, or hummusiyah, you know, hummus restaurants, caterers, things like that. And when my oldest sister Shelby was living in Israel and met Jackie's boyfriend Omri, and Omri introduced her to what he was doing, Shelby was really just floored by the quality of the tahini. It was pressed from and still is pressed from a sesame seed from Ethiopia called white Kumara sesame. And what we realized is, similar to coffee or wine, the region where sesame seeds grow produces a different flavor profile, you know, quality, consistency, really great stuff. And the other thing that we realized was that nobody in the United States knew or cared. So we said, well, why don't we try to make them care? And we started by importing over 10,000 pounds of tahini and really just hitting the streets, seeing who would be interested, who cared, who even knew what tahini was at the time, or all the ways that it could be utilized in the kitchen. And we got very lucky through a mensch of our community, Michael Salmanov, if any of you are familiar. He granted us a meeting early on, even before we had our first import, and when we asked him what tahini was he using, he couldn't name the product and said that he didn't like it. And so we really just saw an opportunity. If Mike Salmanov couldn't have good tahini, I would assume most chefs couldn't have good tahini, or most people at home couldn't have good tahini. So we really just hit the ground running from that really lucky relationship with Mike.
Awesome, thank you. So one thing I really want to talk about with everybody is there's a trend in media now with the glorification of entrepreneurship, right? I mean, we see, you know, if you have Instagram, people are using Instagram, we see kind of the entrepreneur lifestyle, work a little bit and then live large with cars and yachts and watches and all those kind of things. So
what channel are you watching?
That's the way a lot of this is portrayed in media. But one thing that's not talked about is the sacrifice and the hardship and sometimes even the interpersonal conflict that comes with starting a business. So one thing I'd like to speak on and get everybody's feedback about is, what are some of the main challenges that not only you face in starting, but you face in running a business and being an entrepreneur in a society that I don't think clearly understands everything that goes into that. And we'll start this way.
I'll start with Dan this time.
Start with you.
Okay.
We'll start with Amy.
Okay. On off a hard question. I think the one thing that I didn't realize, or maybe I did realize, and that's what made me the right role for it, was if you're not going to do it early on, nobody else is. And so, I would wake up every morning. I was living with my aunt and uncle out in the suburbs, and nobody was telling me to create a list of 100 restaurants in New York and Philadelphia and DC. And nobody was telling me how to, reach out to them or get in my car and actually knock on a door and see if the chef would talk to me. And I think that that's one of the scariest things, and something that really goes under the radar in terms of the dialogue about entrepreneurship is a lot of times you might not have a mentor or, a boss or somebody that has experience doing it. But to, Dan's testament, when you just make yourself, maybe if you want to call it vulnerable, or at least just honest with your peers or other people in the industry that you're in, it's amazing to see what people will share. I would say the hardest thing today is kind of in like this mid-growth kind of stage, is that it takes a lot of money and a lot of time to grow a business, and if you don't have that time or aren't willing to invest it might not go anywhere. And last but not least, being a new mom and having been growing a family at home, you do have to give up some, either from the business or from your home life in order to accomplish what you want to do. So, for instance, for the past 2 weeks, I've been gone 3 nights out of the week, right, traveling to Charleston or Portland, Maine, because if I don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. But it does kind of take you away from some responsibilities at home or social life, missing parties, or just saying no to going out to drinks because you know that you have to get up really early the next morning. So I did, I guess, and gladly, because I cared and I was obsessed, but you sacrifice some of those personal things in order to accomplish something, so that hopefully eventually you can just ride around in nice cars and, press some buttons on a computer and then, I don't know, go swimming or something.
So I think to Amy's point, my lovely wife's here today. We have a young daughter at home, and I feel like a lot of times the sacrifices that we make, that we, as entrepreneurs, we say, oh, as Amy said, it's got to be done, right? We have to do it. But that's not necessarily the way that your spouse or your children feel. They want you home. So I think the work-life balance is probably one of the most difficult challenges that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, and then feelings of guilt that I'm not home while I'm feeling guilty if I'm not there to support my staff. I think that can be one of the biggest things that rise. I personally, and this I can only speak for myself, but I very rarely regret the decisions I make business-wise, because if I make a mistake, I'm going to apply whatever I learned from making that mistake to future opportunities, and that's what helped me grow as an entrepreneur. So that failure never scares me. I think that's kind of the core DNA of an entrepreneur. Is that you just go and you do it, and you learn from what you make mistakes. But the emotions and the kind of way that you feel personally, letting down staff or family, is one that can weigh on you and can make things, cloud your judgment, make things a little bit more difficult. I also think before I started my first business, I worked at ESPN in studio production, which was a fantastic job, but the definition of a corporate job. And what I think I took for granted, as much as I disliked working in a corporate environment, was that there is a defined culture that you can't just put down in a handbook the first day you open a business. So it's great to say, the three of us, if I looked at us, or 4 of us, and said, hey, go out and do something, we're entrepreneurs, yep, head down, go get it done, come back, report, job's done. You can't do that with every employee that you have in your business. People need structure, they need guidance, they're not necessarily autonomous. And as great as it would be to have a team of entrepreneurs beneath you who share that mentality, it doesn't work like that. So I think one of the struggles that I face personally, as I've grown a business now with 20 plus people as opposed to sole proprietor, is that you have to be able to put process and structure in place, or your people they're not gonna have the resources they need to help you achieve what you want to achieve. So it's hard to balance I have 1,000 things I should be doing right now, but I need to step back from that in order to give them the tools that they need to have to be successful. So I think sometimes entrepreneurship
people think it's just you. You know, you're the one doing it. It's all on your shoulders. But the reality is the people that you work with and work for you are equally, if not more important than you, because you can't grow it by yourself.
Has anyone seen Fire Festival? I think it's the epitome of that. Yeah, this is really hard, and I tell that to a lot of people. Like, it is not all it's cracked up to be. A lot of founders have anxiety and depression, and it's related to the work, right? Myself included in that. So this stuff's hard, but like, it makes me personally happy doing this when I'm working, so this is like my path. But it's not for everybody, and I think the glorification of it is dangerous, and I try to be as honest and open as I can about, like, if you want to start a company, like, you're gonna struggle a lot, you're gonna be alone a lot. What is it, like, victory has 1,000 fathers, and defeat, I don't even know the quote, but, like, you know, we've had some pretty down times where, like, we were close to closing up, and, you know, you see who your real friends are, and people who've got your back there, so, yeah, I think there is an unhealthy glorification of entrepreneurship. And I think I try to combat that as much as I can by meeting with people who want to start companies and just being very honest and open about, you know, what they face. And going back to being a younger entrepreneur, it is so much harder, you know, debatable, right? But when you're starting out, when you're young, you don't know anything. That's the first thing, right? Like, you don't have life experience about hiring, about firing people. I remember the first time someone said, "Send me an invoice." Sure. Like, I didn't know what an invoice was. Googling invoices and like printing and like, do I sign here? Like, I don't. So you don't know anything. And the second thing is too, you don't have a network, right? You know, if you're starting a company after you've worked for a while, you can, he'd be great to work with me, or like, that's a good lawyer I know, right? They'll help out. When you're starting out, you don't know anything, and you don't even know what to look for, right? How do you even know who can be of help because you don't have that experience? So if you're younger starting out, the odds are really stacked against you. And there's a reason there's not many younger people that have companies, and it's rare. What ends up happening, and this is just what I've seen, is that it's the people that just don't quit that end up making it. I mean, it's not the smartest, it's not the wisest, it's just it's people who are so stubborn with what they're doing and just keep pushing that eventually they push through all that over time and start to kind of get that experience and knowledge that it takes.
Thank you. I think that all of those were really great answers. I mean, you know, themes of sacrifice, you know, difficult decision making, kind of not knowing how to navigate what's in front of you, all very real things that young entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs in general face. But I'd like to sort of shift this over to a little bit more of a positive note, right? And ask you guys, what is it that motivates you? And then what is it that inspires you? And I think that those are two separate answers, although they're related. You know, because we all need something to motivate us and inspire us to push us through difficult times. So I will ask which of you would want to take this question first. All right.
So the reason I wanted to jump on is because I've been thinking a lot about this actually lately. We have we do a bunch of canning of our beer, and we have people who come in from outside the organization that do help with us when we're putting together these can runs. And one of the women who started working recently, she retired maybe 3 days before she joined us for our first can run. And I said, "How's your retirement going?" She said, "Oh, I hate it." I hate it? What do you mean you hate it? She said, "You've got nothing to do." And I'm thinking to myself, if I left Workhorse tomorrow with a boatload of money, I could do anything I want, or at least enough to retire comfortably. There are 1,000 things that I would do. So I started thinking to myself, is that a healthy thing? Like, am I already thinking past the end of my business, which is years and years away? Unless anyone wants to buy a brewery, in which case, please stop. I'll be around afterward. So I think, you know, what motivates you, it fluctuates. Some days it's you have these amazing sales calls and the brand is exposed in a great piece and people are drinking beer and they're in the tap room and they're happy, and the motivation is seeing that happiness and seeing that you've created a product that people enjoy and an experience they enjoy, and that's what drives you, I think, on a day-to-day, is that what you are putting into the world is well received and it adds value for the folks who are consuming it. From an inspiration standpoint, you know, it's that future that I was thinking about talking to this woman working for us. It's like, where do I want to be? What are the things that I want to achieve out of my life? And as much as I enjoy the work that I do now, I don't anticipate doing this for the rest of my life. So whether it's another entrepreneurial venture or whether I quit and learn to speak Spanish and play golf, I mean, whatever it is that that kind of future thing that changes from time to time, but that inspiration of, being able to achieve those things and not saying, oh, well, I wish I had done that. I don't want to be that guy that looks back on it and said I was a slave to this business, for the majority of my life. So I'm trying to think strategically about, what are the steps that I need to take to not only make my business successful now, but to be able to transition in the future and have that, put that succession plan in place. So whenever I do want to do those things that I'm inspired and that, get me excited, I'm able to do that.
I'm very proud that we paid out close to $2 million to people for just putting that on their car. So we've created income streams for all these people who didn't have it before. And the first 2 years of the business, I met every person who wanted to get their car wrapped in person, like me personally. That's how I spent my weekends. And I would just listen to them and we would talk, and it was just really, I learned so much about how many people really need like an extra $100, $200 a month. Like, not that it'd be nice, but people you would never expect like need this money coming in. So that was very illustrative. That's something we're really proud of, and we're opening up a new nonprofit angle where people can donate money they make from Carvertise to like use a percentage of the money they make to a nonprofit of their choice. So that's something I'm really excited about. What gets me excited is it's that, and then it's also like I love meeting other entrepreneurs, and I love meeting business owners, and I love seeing how I can help them. Like, that gives me energy. Like when I meet with another client or an entrepreneur, and I can think of ways to connect the dots and ways I can help, or you should do this. Like, that gives me energy. And I think what's great about entrepreneurship is there's a really nice community where everyone who, I would say everyone, most people who have done well are very open to paying it forward and passing it down. So meeting other entrepreneurs, helping clients, that stuff gets me really excited.
Yeah, I would say what motivates me is our staff. We have a very small team. It's 2 other full-time employees, a couple part-time employees, some contractors in there, but it really is, my goal to create small-scale economies, to give jobs, incomes, a great corporate culture. That is what reminds me every day to not that we're going to, but to not give up, right? When it gets really, really hard, it's like I would never stop this because I'm so proud of my marketing manager who has a great job now, and our logistics operator that really just gets me out of bed every morning, and to our warehouse in North Kensington. What inspires me are the types of people that can use our product. Tahini is a really unique ingredient in that it is nut-free, it's dairy-free, it's gluten-free, it has many, many health benefits, and is very versatile and easy to incorporate into your diet. And we created a chocolate spread. So that chocolate spread is just 3 ingredients. It's also nut-free and dairy-free and gluten-free. And the amount of mothers that call our office that say, my kid is allergic to this, or my kid has a lot of dietary restrictions, but they love your chocolate Soom. It just, I can get emotional about it now because it's so inspiring. I mean, it's just, you guys could probably speak to this, but you can't do a business that you don't care about. You would stop immediately, right? And if you don't care to, make the world better, I couldn't do this selling potato chips, that's for sure.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Give a round of applause for that. Great. So thank you. I think now it might be a good time to open up the microphone to get some questions coming up and help these people any way that our insights can. So, any questions?
Yeah, did any of you, maybe more so early on than later on, ran into ethical dilemmas and kind of, you want to talk about the specifics, but haven't you
Last November, we enacted a recall. It's not necessarily an ethical dilemma, and our product was safe, but one of the manufacturers that we work with in Israel made some mistakes with some other tahini that they were packing for other companies, and we were in a dilemma where they had not announced their recall yet. We were probably 3 or 4 days ahead of the national FDA recall, and we made the decision to contact every single one of our distributors, customers, put a message out on social media, put a link on our website, be available with my cell phone number, my sister's cell phone number, available 24/7 to answer any questions that might have come up because of people's concerns about the recall. There were other tahini companies that used a similar manufacturer, or used the same manufacturer that we did, that put out no statements. Since then, there have been another couple tahini recalls. Tahini, like a lot of commodities that come from agricultural products, is susceptible to things like salmonella. If you don't know what salmonella is, don't look it up. It's really gross and really annoying. And they also didn't put out any statements. And so my sisters and I really questioned ourselves. Did we have to put ourselves through the ringer the way that we did in order to be as proactive as we were? And we would do it the same way again and again. And I think that our clients, our customers, our family of consumers really appreciated that. And I just think that you have to, as entrepreneurs, you're trusting your gut every day, and I would assume the same thing comes up on any kind of an ethical decision. And then, like the rabbi said, just keep your eyes straight forward and do not look down.
Well, we've turned down business from companies that we just didn't think people would be comfortable with having on their car. We want to have people excited about what they're advertising for, the company buy in. So nothing against title loan companies, and that's actually a big industry, especially in Delaware. They can't, or in Pennsylvania, they can't advertise in certain areas on billboards. There's legally. So in theory, we can go after all these title loan companies. They've requested us because they don't have many advertising options, right? Cars can go in these areas, all these different places. So we turned down let's say a pretty big potential industry just because we didn't want to get into that, it's just not good for our drivers. And then we got an inbound request from a strip club, which we turned down as well, which is actually, again, they put ads on top of taxis all the time. That's one of the biggest advertisers. But again, we just you have to make it for the community, and so that's a couple of examples of turning on business.
You guys are all young, and you're growing businesses, and I see the hockey stick curve we were talking about. My question is, I guess for all three of you, about different stages of growth and how big do you want to be and how big is enough? I mean, I was your age once, I'm a little older now, and I don't really know how big I want to get. I still don't. I'm the kid that's looking down after, and you guys are going up the tree. So how big do you want to be? And have you ever look down and say, hey, we got a lot going on. What are the stages of growth that you go, and where do you see you talk about selling the brewery. Is that the end goal? Do you guys want to sell your companies? Where do we go?
So it's a great question, and I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs that have come in and said, well, should I do this or should I do that? And the answer for everyone is you do what you're most comfortable with. So you need to set very clearly for us at the beginning, the decision was made. We wanted to put a framework in place that would allow us to inform on all future decisions. So we were very clear up front that we want to grow this thing aggressively. We want to have the room to do it. We want to have the access to capital. We want to make sure that we pump this thing full so it becomes a valuable entity, whether that's to sell or as a cash flowing business. That's what we wanted to do. When our investors come and say, well, what's your exit strategy? The reality in our industry is that there's been a ton of mergers and acquisitions in craft beer. I have no idea if that's going to be the case in a couple of years. It could continue to be the case, it could be completely different. So I can't make decisions operationally based on future stuff that I just don't know that's going to happen. But what we've tried to do is we try to build the best business possible and put ourselves in a position where, should that become available to us, we have the resources necessary to take advantage of the opportunity. This particular industry, craft beer, the reason I was drawn to it is because it really combines almost every discipline that you can think of within business. So from production and manufacturing to sales and marketing to staffing to scheduling to route optimization, logistics, you name it, it has it. And that's what makes it fun, but also what makes it incredibly challenging. So my mentality is I don't want to do this forever. Definitely not. I love the people in the industry. I love doing what I do, but there is going to be an expiration date. I just can't see myself doing it for as hard as I'm working for as long as I would need to. So with that in mind, my personal decision is I want to grow the business to the point where it either becomes a sellable entity or I can exit personally and feel like it was worth the time. But yeah, I mean, so much of the decisions, I always talk to people to just set expectations up front about what you want to do, and you can pivot, but if you have that, again, that framework and that signpost, you can make decisions based off of that as opposed to just ambiguously.
So for our company, our vision is global. I think as long as there's a city that has advertising, and as long as there's cars driving around, like, this can work. And we've spent the last 6 years getting that model down in Philly, and now we're at the point where we're scaling across the country and replicating it. Personally, me and my partner have talked about, like, we're going to take this as far as we can take it, and if there's a point in the growth where someone else might be better suited to run the company, then that's a conversation we're willing to have. We're open to it, but someone's going to do this, right? Like, it just makes so much sense. It's inevitable, and the question is it going to be us or is it going to be someone else? And so that's our mindset, that, like, nothing's going to stop us from taking this as far as we can take it.
The realities about CPG, which means consumer packaged goods, so creating a brand, is that very few brands are actually profitable, right? They might have insanely high revenue and be distributed in maybe every store that you can imagine, but it's very hard as a single brand to create profits in that model. The main reason being in that half of the cost, if not more, ends up being in terms of that distribution model, right? So we have to create the product, sell it to a distributor. That distributor then needs to sell it to the store. That store needs to then sell it to the customer. You can just imagine on something that costs $7 that there's not a lot of pennies in there for people to pull from. The value comes from a larger company that's already delivering to a store every day, and it would cost them nothing to drop it off, to take on that brand and deliver it and take all the profits and thereof. So, the goal for us is it's twofold, and it really depends on what direction we decide to take the company, but we sell to both food service, so to restaurants where there is not that kind of appeal of large circulation and a larger company buying you. It's not as sexy to sell a commodity through the back of a restaurant, or expanding our brand in the retail space to every store possible, and diversifying our portfolio of what we have on the shelves in order for a larger company to come in and buy it up. So we're still in that space where we haven't decided what we want to do, but a similar idea to Greg, which is that my sisters and I are really adamant about doing not only what we're good at, but what we like doing. And so far we're all in our roles where we're pretty good at it and like doing it. But the company, I think, is going to get to a point where somebody can do it better than I can, or better than my sister can. And it's just leaving yourself available to find those people and let them kind of take your baby and take it to where you want to see it go.
So Philadelphia was recently passed over for Amazon's HQ2, and that would have been a huge opportunity for the city. And I think in part we can agree that just because we don't have the innovation ecosystem that other cities do, like Silicon Valley, New York City, are there any steps that you guys think Philadelphia can take to become a more innovative city and be more competitive and be more attractive for talented entrepreneurs like yourselves?
I'll take this one. So Philadelphia is a great city, and there's a lot of entrepreneurial energy happening here. So I don't necessarily think that Philadelphia is not well suited for growth, but I think that there's a lot of barriers that exist that sort of make it a little bit more challenging. I mean, number one, you have taxes. I mean, the taxes here are pretty terrible, right? I mean, city taxes is certainly not friendly to business in any way. Another thing is that I feel like a lot of culture here is a little bit safe, right? I mean, when you look at places like Silicon Valley in New York, a lot of the money is very ambitious, it's very risk tolerant, and I seem to find that the money here is very safe and very cautious, as is the mentality of the culture. I mean, I think Quaker culture is fantastic. Nobody yell at me, right? But I think that a lot of that has influenced how people approach new ideas and innovation in the city, where this city is very much so blended, don't stand out. When you have places like Silicon Valley, LA, New York, there's certainly a culture to push and to do something new and to be creative. And I think that at the end of the day, I'm not so sure it's an infrastructure problem, and more so, let's learn to shine a little bit, right? I mean, we don't talk about the great things that do exist here, right? So look at our biomedical sciences industry, and it's really one of the biggest biomedical sciences industries in the country, if not, arguably the largest, right? And nobody talks about it, right? It's kind of one of those things where the city is very quiet on what it's good at, and I feel like if people in the culture sort of shifted to be a little bit more boisterous and giving everybody, some pats on the back about what's going on here, you'd attract more talent. The money would maybe be a little bit more ambitious, and maybe people would be a little bit more, I guess you could say, brave with the ideas to chase new things and to be a little bit more innovative. I don't know, maybe if anybody has any feedback on that sort of thought process, I'd be happy to hear it. But
no, I agree with a lot of those ideas. When I share with people why we decided to have our business in Philadelphia, yes, it was because my sister went here, she went to Penn, had a great network here, but also the proximity to New York and DC is so valuable for a company that was self-distributed for the first year and a half. So I could, pack up some buckets in my car, drive to New York City, and be back by 10 a.m. to, hit the streets in Old City for the day to try to get some new accounts. The other thing is that the cost of living is really attractive compared to New York or DC, which probably would have been the other, East Coast cities that we would have considered starting our businesses. But what I warn people who want to start businesses in Philadelphia is, it's great for the proximity, it's great for cost of living, it's very attractive. There's not a lot of money here, right? Like the money is not like it is in New York or San Francisco, at least for food, the way that it just, like you said, is a little bit more risk averse and just like kind of gets tossed around. So you really have to have that blue collar grit that Philly is kind of known for in making a little bit go a very long way in terms of raising any kind of capital and also executing on an idea.
This is more of an anecdote on human nature where I started out, we were starting Penguin Ads at the time. I sold sponsorships in Cecil County, Maryland as a part-time job. And I would go to these government affairs meetings because I was into that in Cecil County. And they would talk about we gotta be more like Wilmington, Delaware, they've got their stuff. And then I moved to Wilmington and I'm going to all these meetings in Wilmington and they're like, Philly does it right. How do we become more like Philly? Then I moved to Philly and they're just like, New York doesn't even look at us. What we're seeing here. Then I go to New York. New York's like, well, Silicon Valley is, they're doing this. And then Silicon Valley, Austin's what's coming up now. So I think we're doing better than we think. I've personally, coming from Wilmington, moving to Philly, it's been a really pleasant, other than the parking. That's a nightmare. But the community is giving. The culture is looser, I would say, than it was where I was prior. The money is tight here, I would say. I would agree with that. But I would the last 3 or 4 years, there's been a shift. There's been, technically the publication, I don't know if you guys checked it out, they've done a great job of promoting all the good that's happening. So I'm optimistic about Philly's trajectory.
So all of you picked a business that's not like just consulting or coaching or something. You are making a product and then you have to distribute it, market it. You got human resources in there. Was it, when you first started, this was most important, and now you see that being most important, and as you grow, does it change those kinds of functions? Do they become more important, more crucial to the business? Have you noticed it? And no, it's okay.
It definitely has for Soom Foods. One of the first hires that we made, which was actually a mistake, was hiring somebody for marketing. And don't get me wrong, different brands will do this very different ways. But we realized that was a mistake because the one thing that everybody, if anybody was involved in the company, had to do was sell. I mean, the only thing that we needed to do in order to keep our company alive was to get people to buy tahini, and the way to do that is to get people to taste tahini. So it was like, maybe it was only me, but if anybody was involved in the business, we realized that we all had to be focused on sales. And so that idea of marketing for us was very secondary, which I know is very different for other consumer packaged goods or branded products. But if I start another business, it will absolutely be a service-based business, because dealing with inventory and the kind of cash, constraints that puts on a business is something that we deal with every single day. So, or I'd also sell something made of feathers instead of tahini, because 40 pounds of tahini is very, very heavy, and I never want to pick up a bucket again in my life.
Yeah.
You guys are all relatively young, and for those of us that have been in business for quite a while, I've seen a very, very different trend when hiring, and that is younger people today seem to be looking for jobs that they can have while they look for the next job, as opposed to those looking for a career. Are you finding it hard to find people to stay with you, and how do you incent them to stay?
Yeah, so it's a challenge. People are always the biggest challenge and the biggest blessing in business, for sure. We've found that if we, again, I can only speak to my particular business, but because we have what we believe to be a pretty high ceiling in terms of where our brand can go, one of our selling points is, yes, we're a startup, we're constrained by what we can offer from a financial package. We just started offering healthcare and benefits as of July 1, which is great, and it's exciting, although my wife's healthcare is better, so I'm staying on first. But yeah, thanks, BBC. The challenge is there are different types of people that are looking for different types of things, and if somebody wants to come in, what I like to be able to offer is less the currency. I mean, we try to pay fair market, if not a little bit above, so we can have fewer high-performing people as opposed to a million people who are just kind of average. But what we've tried to say is, listen, if you come in here right now, the mentality is we want to be able to offer you entrepreneurial tools. So first of all, if you start as a bar back, what do you need to do to become a bartender? And from a bartender, what do you need to do to become a sales rep? From a sales rep, what do you need to do to become a manager? So giving them the tools necessary to understand how they can apply that to their growth within the company is important, but then also, making ourselves available to them and saying, I don't care if you leave here in 2 years or 6 months or whatever, we just want to make sure that where you go, you have the skill set necessary to be useful and a valuable commodity to yourself and to your future business. And I think the transparency of saying, you can do whatever you want. Like, I'm not going to be able to change someone's mind, but if I can give them the best place that they can spend their time and they feel comfortable and supported in the business, then hopefully they'll provide a better value for us.
And I'd like to speak to this one. So I've been really blessed with the people. I'd like to actually give a shout out to Bianca, who's sitting over there, who is honestly one of the most incredible people I've ever had the privilege of meeting and working with my entire life. So she's really just an unbelievable person. Everything. Well, she really is. But I'd like to actually sort of change the culture, the question a little bit over to culture, right? So we talk a lot about, retaining talent, and people aren't staying in careers, they're just taking jobs. I think that that's okay. As a millennial, because no offense, but your generation, it kind of sucked. Like a lot of people would find a job and they would stay in it. They didn't like it, and they'd say, okay, we're going to stay here for the next 30 years because we're going to build a great career and have a retirement and decide whatever, and Social Security, blah 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 blah. We're probably not going to have Social Security. We're crippled with student debt. Right? So the thing is, the one thing about millennials is that if they hate it, they're not going to stay. Right? So you're either going to find people that really love what you're doing, and they're going to be bought into your mission, and they're going to stay with you, at which point you found a great person. But if that person's not happy, you can't hold on to things that don't make you happy. Right? So I think as sort of like a shout out to our generation, right, is that in a lot of ways there's high turnover, but I think that it's important for young people to be able to have the room to grow and to figure out what fits them and what makes them happy. So you could do your best to retain people, and I think that that's important, but at the same time, you can't force people to stay in situations that aren't best for them.
I think that has anything to do with the fact that your generation is the first generation ever not to make as much money as their parents.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad.
I was actually going to speak to that. I was just at a conference in Charleston, and it was for the hospitality industry, and they deal with that. It doesn't matter how old you are, right? People are going from restaurant to restaurant, kitchen to kitchen, waiter to waiter. You know, it's a really hard industry to retain talent in. And I think that at least in terms of some kind of a corporate setting, what I took away from that conference was giving people, especially young people, a trajectory to keep getting promoted and to create a career path for them within an organization. So our other two, I'm full-time with the company as CEO, and we have 2 other full-time employees. Both of them started with us as interns, now have been full-time employees of us, one for almost 3 years, one for almost 2 years. Shout out to Temple, both of them are from Temple, and we love our intern program out of Temple. And so I guess the thing that I left that conference really inspired by was to, target younger people that are working for us, find out what they want to do, and see if we can help shape that trajectory within our organization in order to not have them leave. The other hard lesson that I've learned in the 6 years and having fired and hired and lost a couple employees now is sometimes that mix-up is good, right? You think and you get comfortable with somebody in their role and you don't realize that something could have been done better until they leave. And so, that's been a really important lesson for me as well, is to not assign so much value to any one person and instead make sure, so what Dan was saying, that processes are in place in order to onboard people, efficiently and to give them a role to stay, but also to be able to pass on any knowledge that somebody gets within that position to the next person coming in.
So, one thing we do, which I think you want to look for the right kind of ambition, because if you're hiring someone who's ambitious, that's great. But if they're ambitious means it's all about them, it's not what we're looking for. We want someone who's going to be ambitious about the Carvertise and wants to grow with Carvertise. So, you can't, people say what they want in interview, right? So you can't always screen for that, but that's the first thing we look for. And then we have this mindset, we call it 7th round draft picks. So we try to find people that are overlooked, right? Because if you find someone that's overlooked based on whatever reason, whether from, past, whatever, and you give them a chance, there's a lot more loyalty built in there, right? As per se, to someone who's got a great resume and, top of the line, it's we pride ourselves on having a very diverse team and putting people in positions that they might not even realize they could do, right? And when you do that, you build a lot of loyalty and goodwill and the right kind of ambition. And then the last thing I would say is using social media. So we hire people, we'll say, look, we're going to try to build your personal brand up also. We'll start getting you to events, start posting your pictures on, tagging you in stuff, meeting some of the people we know as well. So trying to kind of understand that being with us will help their career and their personal brand, I think is a recruiting tool that we use that I think most businesses need to start recognizing if they're gonna keep talent.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap things up now because we're hitting our time limit, but let's give a round of applause to